What's up? I came across something that I haven't thought about since I was in kindergarten, and that is paper mache. I was on Pinterest, as I always am, looking for some craft inspiration, and I came across this paper mache sculpture, and it was a sculpture of an ice cream sundae, and I thought it was the absolute cutest thing. And then I was like, wait a second, I just got an idea. I want to try to make my own paper mache sculpture. I wanted to stick to something very simple. I decided that I'm going to make a paper mache donut. I hope it works out. It's going to be an adventure and I'm bringing you along for the ride. Let's get started. To make our paper mache donut, we're going to need newspaper, of course, glue, a mixing bowl, some tape, foil, a mixing spoon, a paintbrush. I grabbed some paper towels as well, and I also grabbed a trash bag so we can work on top of that and not get a mess all over my desk. To create the structure of the donut, I'm using tin foil. I'm just ripping out a bunch of different sheets and rolling it up until I get this thickness that I'm wanting. And I did underestimate how much foil this was going to take. I only had one roll and it was about halfway full, and I ended up using it all. So the donut didn't end up as thick as I wanted it to be, but that's all right. Once I felt like each side was thick enough, I started forming a C shape with both sides to create a circle for the donut. From there, I took some masking tape and I connected one of the sides, and then I took some foil and wrapped that around just to give it some extra strength, just to make sure that it didn't bend or anything. I connected the other side, and then it was time to add some thickness. I did this by ripping up pieces of tin foil and wrapping it around the circle until I ran out. And like I said before, unfortunately, it's not as thick as I wanted it to be, but I made it work. This is what we ended up with. Not too bad. Then from here, I took some masking tape and I covered the donut to create a smoother surface for the paper mache to lay on top of. Now that the donut structure is finished, it's time to create the paper mache paste. I'm doing this by adding 2 4-ounce bottles of all-purpose Elmer's glue, and this is equivalent to 1 cup of glue. Next, we add 1 cup of water and we give it a good stir. Lastly, we add 1 teaspoon of salt and give that a good mixture until it's dissolved. Once the mixture is done, I set that aside, and then it's time to rip up some paper. I'm doing this in strips and in pieces, and I am just using some newspaper that I would normally throw away. My favorite thing about paper mache is that you can create anything using anything that you would typically throw away, like cardboard, water bottles, newspaper, junk mail, and I think it's really fun to upcycle stuff like that. So I just absolutely love it. Just a side note, I think the next time I do this project, I'm going to prep the strips of paper before I make the liquid. And now it's time for the real fun to start, applying the paper mache. I am doing this by dipping the paintbrush in the paper mache liquid and painting it on both sides of the newspaper strip. Then I'm using the paintbrush to apply the newspaper onto the donut and using it to just flatten and smooth out any of the edges. This was really fun and took me back to my childhood, and I really enjoyed listening to music and just taking my time and enjoying the process of it all. After some time, I realized it was probably going to take me eternity to finish this donut if I continued to use the paintbrush. So I said, you know what, screw it. We are going to get really messy, really creative. like, we're really gonna enjoy this process. And I just ditched the paintbrush and said, we're going all in, and started using my hands. And I'm not gonna lie, this was way more enjoyable than using a paintbrush. I love getting messy when I make crafts or projects, and this was a blast. And not to mention, it went by way quicker than what it would have if I continued to use the paintbrush. Three layers later, and this is what we're working with. Now it was time to set this bad boy aside to dry, so I just folded up the trash bag, and I kind of struggled on how I was going to have this set up. I started with the bowl and then realized it's probably going to stick to the bowl and get stuck. So then I went with these little paint bowls that I use, and I set them apart, and I kind of balanced the donut on the two, and it seemed to work pretty well. Now we let it dry overnight. All right, it is the next day, and here is an update on the donut. It's not sticky anymore. It's starting to dry. It's still a little wet. Probably needs to dry for another day or so, I would say. But it's looking good. I can't wait to paint this. I cannot wait to add the details. I will check back in with you once this is all dry and ready to paint. After 3 days of drying, this donut is finally ready to be painted. So I'm using this white gesso that I got at Michael's, and we are laying down a nice base coat. This is gonna help with covering the newspaper up, so when we do put acrylic paint on here, it's not gonna show through. It's gonna make it look nice and bright, and it'll be a good base for the acrylic paint just to stick to in general. I ended up letting this donut dry overnight just to ensure that the base coat was completely dry, and I'm taking some yellow and brown acrylic paint that I purchased at Michael's. I swear I get all my craft supplies from there. And I'm also mixing a little bit of white into it until I get the perfect shade that I want, and this is what I ended up with. Now that the donut is painted, it is time to move on to creating the icing using this lightweight spackle that I found at Lowe's. And man, I absolutely love this stuff. It looks like icing. It is crazy how much it looks like icing, but it smells like poop. So yeah. Anyway, I am mixing in some brown acrylic paint, and I realized that I didn't have enough paint to make it as dark as I wanted to, so I am squeezing the life out of my acrylic paint bottle to get as much brown paint out as possible. And this is what we ended up with. Not the shade I really wanted, but we're making it work. So now I'm taking this icing and I'm just spreading it along and smoothing it out to make it look like a real chocolate iced donut. How beautiful does this look? Now it is time to add the finishing touch, which are these clay sprinkles that I made a long time ago for a different project. I had a bunch left over. Maybe in another video I will show you guys how I make them. How freaking awesome does this donut look, you guys? I let it dry overnight. The color lightened up a little bit, but holy crap, this is amazing. Alright, you guys, so it's been a couple days since I let this donut dry. I did this off camera, but I added a nice layer of gloss on top to make it look more like icing. And I'm actually debating on putting some glaze on the back, but I don't know if I want the whole donut to be shiny. What do you guys think? I think it turned out really well. It's so cute. It's pretty lightweight and it's really hard. This was extremely fun to make. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it more than you will ever know. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. See you next time.